Okay, looks like we're live here. Seems to be doing better than this morning. I hope the sound is good, and I hope someone will tell me if it isn't. Um, when I was looking at the replay this morning, it's the sound just was not looking good. It was not good. I was like really crackly and stuff. So I'm hoping the sound is better now. So tell me if it isn't. We're going to be talking about Fate Core and RPGs in general. This is Fate Core. Fate Core is a story engine. Characters live at the core of fate. So let's start with what is Fate Core. For those who don't know, so Fate Core falls under the category of games called tabletop role-playing games. Um, by the way, on the side here, that's just a clip of me drawing so that the stream is got something to look at other than just my mug. So Fate Core falls under the category of tabletop role-playing games, uh, which is role-playing games that uh, aren't played on a computer or anything. You play on paper, and you use these funny-looking dice. Let me get them. They're called fudge dice. So, have these symbols on them. Hopefully, I'm showing you here. Yeah, they have these different symbols on them, and it's a simplified dice system than regular. So, if you've heard of Dungeons and Dragons from pop culture, Fate is like this, but it's a simplified thing. So, the idea is that you create a character to go live in a story and immerse yourself in this collaborative storytelling experience. So you and the players and the game master, and in this case, it would be me because I am running a game of Fate. We go play. We go play in a story. Rekaberga's Break from Hell. Well, I'm glad you chose to take your break from hell by listening to this live stream. So the idea is that you use your imagination to transport yourself in this imaginary world, and you take actions, imaginary actions, and we roll dice to see what the outcome is. So I have been thinking about Fate. The reason I've been thinking about this is because uh, I'm running a game set in the world of the comic books that I create, and um, this I saw somebody make a post on Substack, and they said if you could introduce somebody to their first game of RPG, which system would you use? Because there's a lot of different versions of this. And I said, Fate Accelerated for sure, which is the streamlined version of Fate Core, the book I just showed you. And the reason is because the rules are simplified. Um, Now, there is a challenge that I've noticed with Fate because there is an expectation in maybe our cultural consciousness about what RPG games are, because most people will have had some sort of familiarity with the video game version and at least kind of know what Dungeons and Dragons is. But in Fate, I used to be like, let me put it this way. I used to be really into board games. And I also really like Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder, which is its main competitor. Until I realized suddenly all these board games with the artwork and the boxes and all that kind of promise this idea that you will be transporting yourself into this other world. But all of this aesthetic stuff is really just ornamentation over top some math, right? It's really just math because it comes down to resource management or, different mathematical calculations. Really doesn't matter what the board game is. It's a math thing. And temperamentally, I'm more like an intuitive, creative guy, not into the math puzzle breaking mode most of the time. So I gravitated towards the RPGs. The problem is with the RPGs is they promise it's going to be a different experience than a board game, that you're going to be able to inhabit these imaginary worlds and stuff, but it's just a lot of math, just a little bit more of the intuition stuff. And I wanted the inverse. I wanted very little math and a lot of creativity, a lot of imagination. So Fate, I discovered it, and it makes that promise, and I've tried it on various different players, and it does work. However, we talked about these kind of inbuilt expectations of what an RPG is going to be. Fate does require a paradigm shift from some players. Some people take to it just like that, but some players struggle. So I think it's because we've been trained so much on thinking tactically, analytically, thinking, but not so much thinking imaginatively and intuitively. Whereas this game system very much rewards bold imagination and does not reward like mathematical optimization mind. So, for instance, when you drop players in an environment, an imaginary environment, in these gaming situations. Hi, Sue. Thanks for joining. Actually, you might like this. The What happens is that they project themselves in this environment as if it was a physical environment, and they imagine themselves in this environment. And then they start thinking tactically. What can I use? Where can I stand? In relation to the hostile forces, so that I can optimize for the best tactical situation. But the point of this exercise of Fate is not to transport yourself in an environment that is like this one. It's to transform yourself into a story environment. So in Fate, you are a character in a story. So you don't make decisions like you make in an environment, or you would make. You make decisions that story people make. And story people don't necessarily optimize for the best outcome. Story people behave according to their dramatic, dynamic personalities. So the paradigm shift that needs to happen when someone gets into Fate is that they must think like a story person, right? So, and what you're trying to optimize for in Fate is not like in a video game where you're trying to optimize for the highest damage per second, or you're trying to be tactically optimal. You're trying to optimize for the most potential for narrative richness, right? So that means that your character should be doing things that are going to create narrative opportunities. So if you're faced with a wizard and you need to try to, the wizard has you cornered, you're not thinking about it. It might be the most interesting thing to insult his mother, right? Right? If that's what your character's personality, which was defined at the beginning of the game, uh, so I find new players who don't have much experience playing games at all kind of fare better in a way because they are kind of reckless. They do whatever, and it becomes an interesting thing. So the idea is that one thing I've found in Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder and the traditional RPG gaming systems is that there's a lot of can I types of questions. Can I shoot my bow at this guy in the back or whatever? Whereas in Fate, it's what you want to be doing is to say, I think it would be cool if I, shot an arrow between the ladder and the chair and then I just happened to hit the guy in the back, right? Because that's what would be happening in a story, a cool, interesting thing. And that's where your dice come in. So you have certain proficiencies in certain areas. So if you happen to be an archer, then the chances that you will be succeeding on that are high. Sue is asking for the mic gain to be higher. I turned it up a little bit, and I'll turn it up on my preamp. Let me know if that's better. Hopefully that's better. So that's what. Yeah. So Ray Cabarga's Break from Hell says, I'm of the same mind, all art, no math. So the idea in Fate is the mathy part is the outside edges of what you can do. So he creates a boundary so things don't go completely off the rails, so that there is a sense of risk, so that what you're narratively attempting may not happen. Okay. So that's a long explanation of how Fate works. So I got some notes here. So what's interesting about Fate is you don't have to have combat to have exciting scenarios. You can simply, you could do really anything. You could play a romance game. I was thinking it'd be cool if you, like in the game that I play, there are a bunch of superheroes, and then they do vigilante stuff, but then the media spins the story against them. Now, if they're sharp and savvy and creative, they can go ahead and have a counter media narrative running to try to spin the story in their favor, right? And so there's no need for rolling dice only when you're punching a pirate in the face. You can, any sort of narrative conflict can be resolved with the Fate gaming system. And there's this open so openness to this system that it can create a sort of paralysis, because what do you want to do? Well, you can do anything. Another thing this system does is it puts a lot of power in the players. So in traditional gaming systems, what you the dynamic you see is players trying to figure out what is the game master going to allow in certain situations. But in Fate, the players act as characters according to the characters' personalities, and the game master reacts to that and just escalates the stakes so that it becomes more representative of what a story actually is, which is it revolves around the protagonists, right? So that whatever the protagonists do is what the story is. Right? So to me, that makes sense. Blank sheet of paper syndrome, definitely. So the thing with Fate is that there are skills in the Fate core system, but there's a stripped down version of it where you don't have any stats really. You only have styles. So you don't have skills like stealth, fighting, athletics, and that sort of thing. What you have is you can do anything, but you're good especially at one of four things. You can do things carefully, you can do things quickly, you can do things stealthily, and you can do things flashily, which really demonstrates what a narrative situation is with a bunch of characters, which really demonstrates to me that Fate is actually a writing workshop disguised as an RPG game. So in a character, in a situation where they're being chased, would optimally do something quickly, but that's not who their character is, and they're not good at that. So they can try to do it quickly, but it's more narratively interesting if they try to do it flashily, right? So that they draw attention to themselves, and then the stakes get higher. So it kind of explains how a story works, right? It's you do this, you get that, but then this happens. Just looking through my notes here. So the challenge that I'm facing is how to communicate this paradigm shift that needs to happen to the players so that they can get the most out of it. So it's creating options for them so that they kind of see it's the main tool that I have is called compels. So all the characters, they have skills, but the core of the heart of their character is called aspects. And it's literally just things about your character. It's literally how you would make a character sheet if you were writing a book and not playing a game. So a good example, so you have the aspect, which is your high concept. One of the players that's in my crew now is a modern day Jacobin, right? There's also a modern day Robin Hood. That's the high concept. It's an aspect of the character. It's something that tells you who the character is. And some aspects are troubles, but the secret is all the aspects cut both ways, because the players use their aspects to gain points and increase their likelihood of success whenever they do a thing by invoking those aspects and narratively justifying anything that they might want to do that's difficult. But I can compel them to play according to the aspects, give them points, but I can use the aspects in such a way that it creates complications for their narrative. For instance, there was a situation where our modern day Robin Hood, who has the trouble aspect of finders keepers, he's a bit of a kleptomaniac. It was fighting a ninja, and mid battle, he dodged some ninja stars. But I gave him a point and compelled his finders keepers aspect to pick up the ninja stars mid battle, right? Which is a bit of a goofy, absurd situation, but it's narratively interesting that this character would put himself at risk so he could pick up these shiny new ninja stars. So that's the idea. That's one of the tools that I have as a game master to nudge the players into narratively interesting situations and shake them loose out of tactical analysis patterns. And to me, this is fundamental, like human mind stuff, like just different paths of thinking, right, that people are drawn to. There's also especially special challenges to playing online. So that's one thing I noticed. Excuse me. So the playing around a table, Fate, you don't need maps. It's a lot of like body language and pointing and gestures, and we all help each other always refresh ourselves into the theater of the mind thing, which is quite liberating, right? There's no, well, I'm 20 feet from the guy. It's like you're around 20 feet, or you're you're close enough, or it's more like that. But online, there's none of that. There's like connectivity issues and difficulty hearing people sometimes. So I've created a map to kind of like focus everyone's attention. But I find when you drop a bunch of players on a map, they start thinking, how can I optimally use this map to my advantage, right? So there's something about a map, a visual, like maybe because it's like more of a technical diagram, looks like a floor plan, that causes the mind to move away from intuition and narrative style thinking. So that's very interesting to me. Yeah. Okay, we got a lot of people. Charles Brown, Ann Robinson, Tess McCarthy. Yeah. Well, I didn't realize there were so many people interested in RPGs. So another challenge of the RPG hobby is that it's a social hobby. So you got to think about it kind of like a poker night or something like that, right? So, or even like being in a band. I was in a band, and we had a drummer. It was kind of a drummer, who was clearly not as invested in the project as everyone else. And it's unrealistic for everyone to expect everyone to have the same level of investment at all times. It's just people's lives go up and down. It's just normal. But there's a challenge where you almost only have as much potential as your least invested member. I think that's true. So because it's a social hobby, there is like a collective effort thing going on. So and there's just, when there's more people, especially online, there's more things that can go wrong. Someone's schedule changes last minute. Just a lot of possible small things that make a heap, right? So that's another challenge to overcome. And I'm quite Canadian, so I'm quite passive about these sorts of things. I'm very concerned about coming across as controlling people or pushing them too hard in one direction or another. So, I maybe I should speak up some more, but um, not that there's any serious problems or anything. But I think, I do play with like half the crew's American, so maybe maybe that's has something. Maybe that's a special challenge. Yeah, and that's another thing. Like internationally, you're coming across different people from different regions, and it's different time zones. So there's all sorts of. I like those challenges. I wouldn't want to do them 40 hours a week, but it's interesting to be thinking about that, and it's what caused me to uh, write a whole bunch of notes, 3 pages, 3 pages of notes on Fate, because I was kind of turning over all these challenges in my head. The rewards of gaming, Suteri, I actually don't give a shit about games. I am interested in hearing your insights. Well, uh, there the rewards of like investing into this hobby. Some of the best friends I've made in life were through this hobby. Um, so we can't go out and, slaughter hogs and, and almost get eaten by a bear and make that sort of memory. But we can do it in the imagination. So there's something about, sitting around a table and telling stories that's very old and traditional, actually, right? Um, so the reward is the participation in collaborative storytelling and the potential to make good friends and good memories from it. Um, the other reward for people who are creative to try this sort of hobby or invest themselves in it is if you can hook into that paradigm shift that I've been talking about, um, it'll stimulate your creative imagination. And I have a book here that I take notes in for all my comic book stories and stuff. And just from playing Fate and working on these notes, I've come up with more ideas for comic book stories, right? So that's another thing. That's another reward from investing in this hobby. Let me know if you have any questions. There was one more thing, so I'll recap a little bit, and if you have any questions, let me know. So in Fate, we kind of invert the sort of questions we asked, whereas in traditional gamings we go, "Can I do this? Can I do that?" Whereas in Fate, there's no it's not so much a question, but rather a suggestion. I think it would be cool if there was a secret door here. You don't ask, "Can I look for a secret door?" You go, "I feel like it would just make sense if there was a secret door in this boss palace or whatever," right? So it's and there's no turns in Fate. There's no turns. Everybody's playing all the time, and whatever this makes sense for the scene for characters to be featured, maybe more or less, we just do that. We don't take turns. So everybody's playing all the time. So if you have points, you can give it to your teammates to help them out, or you can invoke your aspects while they're doing a thing. It's really like a more organic thing. Suteri, so you feel the benefit is that we can bring some of these ancient practices into our more modern awareness via virtual experience. Well, it probably maybe it's not ancient, maybe it's always there, right? And it just finds its way into our lives, like telling stories around a table. That's telling stories around a campfire. it doesn't go away. It just morphs. These things are bigger than us. We can't do away with them. They follow us wherever we go. I think that's my idea. Um, yeah. I'm just going to look through my notes here if I forgot anything. So it's like aspects of a character, narrative aspects rather than mathematical descriptions. Um, the characters drive the world, not the game master. It's collaboration over control. Fate's a storytelling workshop more than it is a game of any type. It's a game that serves as a writing workshop. Um, like RPGs like this, reading is a solo enterprise. Like reading comic books, you do it by yourself. You read books by yourself. It turns that into a social experience. Writing, you're doing it by yourself. But when you're playing a Fate game, you're writing and reading, you're discovering the story socially, right? Which is, I can't think really of much else that does that. It seems to me the only medium to have that sort of experience, which is really cool, I think. Very special. Yeah. Players kind of have to get over their fear of failure because there's no such thing. Like your characters can't die; they just get knocked out of a scene at worst. So there's really no failure. It's only increasing the richness of the story. I think also players are concerned about stepping on the toes of other people, but it really is if it's a collaborative process, you gotta not hesitate to make a contribution, right, to the whole thing. So and trust that the other players are able to uh, kind of handle that and be able to receive and reciprocate and that sort of thing. Sue Terry, all sorts of good questions. I think characters drive the game, not the game master, is an important insight. We don't need to let real life game masters control us. Everything comes down to individuals who have the balls to go against the status quo. Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. Or at least it's a game. It's an idealized version of that because the game master, if the story and the game is good, is collaborating with the players. Everybody's like playing the game back and forth. And so the game masters aren't um, game controllers, right? They are collaborators with the players. Yeah. It'd be nice if real life was like this, right? Well, maybe it is at a high enough level. I think that's about it. I've gone through all my notes. I'll be condensing this maybe into clips or an article or something to give to my gaming crew. And see how it goes. Thanks for your attention. I appreciate it. Um, if you have an opportunity, you've never tried a game like this, and you have an opportunity to try one, it's worth trying at least once. It's a very unique sort of thing if you can find a good one. So good luck, everybody. I'll see you in the next one. God bless.